Certainly one of the things that the new standards have added to lots of teachers' vocabulary is the term close reading, which is funny because at least in general language, the term close reading gets used in pretty much every field. If you look in newspapers like the New York Times, you'll see the term close reading actually comes up with some frequency. That I think everybody probably has some kind of general idea of it. But the term itself actually goes back to the 1920s and 30s, and it comes out of English departments. It comes out of literary studies, literary criticism. And it was the notion that you could understand a text by just using the information the author gave you. That you would interpret that text by analyzing that author's language choices and the information provided. That you wouldn't go and read the author's biography. You wouldn't go and look at his or her other books to see what maybe they meant there. You wouldn't, go to, look it up in the encyclopedia and see what somebody else thought about it. You would actually go in and try to understand what the text had to say and how it worked. Why did he use this word and that word? Why was that word repeated? Why did he put those two characters side by side? Why did it have? Why did chapter 2 follow chapter 1, given that it was such different information? Why did he do that, and then came back to the original stuff in chapter 3? What was going on there? What effect did that have? Getting students to think about that, it really became quite commonplace in English departments. A lot of secondary English teachers certainly don't have a clear idea of what close reading means, but for a lot of elementary teachers, they'd never heard of it. And so the notion of teaching kids not just to answer literary and inferential questions or write their questions and think and read questions and that kind of thing, to actually start to think about not just what this text had to say, and to do that basically on what the text said, not by a lot of other information that somebody gave you, a publisher, a teacher, that you'd collected someplace else. But then you'd also look at, how does this thing work? And can you, let's open the hood and look underneath and see what's going on here. That you could actually teach kids to do that, I think has been a revelation for teachers. And I think they're finding it to both be a big challenge and a little scary, but also a lot of fun and really exciting, because they're starting to see their kids can actually engage in that kind of thought with a bit of guidance and support.
They're never going to be able to write these kinds of papers where they explain an idea or trace an argument if they aren't reading texts that do that for them. These texts serve as mentor texts, also resources to build into their texts. It's a balance, it's logical, and it's the kind of reading our students want to do. It's not just a one-time thing. It has to be used often enough that students develop the habit of reading closely. When I think about a close reading lesson, it's with a short, worthy passage, a complex passage, not something students can read on their own. If they can read it on their own, we don't need to use close reading. We should let them read it on their own. So it's a complex piece of text, and it's short so we can practice this process. We ask kids to annotate in some ways. We ask them to interact with the text, and maybe it's directly on the text, or maybe it's in notes, or maybe it's with stickies, but somehow they're working directly on a text through some sort of annotation or note-taking process. And we use questions to guide their thinking from more literal levels of thinking, which is okay. Kids are allowed to think literally about a text. It's not sufficient to end the lesson there. The close reading lessons should take students on that journey from the literal through the structural to the inferential. Close reading is not a once and done reading. You don't read something once and then totally get it in a close reading lesson. When texts are complex, they require rereading, going back and mining that text for evidence, looking for what the author's saying. How does that square with what you're thinking? How does that respond to a question you had or that someone else posed, someone in your group or one of the teachers posed? How you think through those complex texts to get to the point where you're ready to produce something on your own. I like to say that the text we choose for close reading should inspire our readers. It's not just this passive experience anymore. Close reading should be inspirational. Kids should want to write. They should want to investigate. They should want to present what they learned from close reading lessons. There's a strong connection between the close reading that students do and the subsequent writing that they do, because those close reading lessons should provide sufficient information and inspiration, so they go forward and do something afterwards.
Another thing that I've been real excited to see and really been pushing was the fact that the use of text evidence. I don't think I have been in a classroom in the past, I would say 14 months, that I have not heard a teacher, at least once in the time I was there and working in that room, I heard them say, "Where's your text evidence? Did you find your text evidence?"